This is my wife's family farm. Our son will be the 5th generation here. And over the years, Zoe's grandfather and his brother farmed this ground, and they were one of the first ones to go to a tractor and leave the horses at home. One of the first ones to use fertilizer, and so on. And so we've kind of continued to be a little bit progressive, not maybe being the cutting edge, but we've tried to change things. And 6 years ago, if someone asked me if I was going to be a no-tiller, I'd say no and hell no. It ain't happened. But the necessity was I needed new drills, and they weren't making 150s anymore. And so, not this particular drill, but one similar to this was our first drill that I decided I was going to do a conversion on. These drills, this is actually a 70-footer. My first one was a 60-footer. It is a Wingback, like a Harrow type drill, and it was designed as a 12-inch, 4-rank, essentially a no-till drill. So what I liked about it was if I could easily convert it to a 2-rank drill, and in order to make the spacings work with the frame I had, I said I wanted to be between a 14 and an 18-inch spacing. This actually worked out to be 16.5-inch spacing drill. We designed new points for it. These are actually with the help of Ron Kyle. This was my idea. This is a second attempt, but it is similar to, if you're used to a 150 drill, an Eagle Beak type point. Very narrow at the bottom, not broad. I didn't want to disturb any more dirt than I had to, but still kept the dirt spreaders to keep the furrow, because my initial attempt at this was I was replacing drills for summer fall. And so that's what I did. And this is actually the 3rd drill that I put together. I sold my 60-footer. And the week just to the north of you, there's about 800 acres there, is traditional summer fall. A lot of residue. And we had some issues with getting through it if we would start to get those dewy mornings or something. But this drill has more height than a 150. There's more space between the openers front to back. You can get essentially straw this height, and I could see this field without mowing. And what you see right here is exactly that. Same similar kind of stubble stand there. We see that with no mowing. What you're seeing going on across the road, you'll see my mower running. We have decided that we want to get a little more of that mulch on the ground. I don't want to walk on dirt if I don't have to. I like the idea of catching a little more snow with the high stubble, but it gives us a little less grief later on with weed control, because bare ground is a good place for weeds to grow. The only thing I do different when I see summer fall ground or no-till ground is taking out a few more cylinder blocks or putting them in. There's no other modifications for this drill when I'm switching from one system to the next, which made the transition into no-till, because I had no intentions of doing this. It made it so now I use the same tool for both jobs, no matter what I want to do. And I still have all my dryland equipment. If I decide that a field should be traditional summer fall, I'm still going to do that, still going to use the same drill. One of the great things that happens when you go to an air cart, and especially a big one, is now all of a sudden you decide, hey, I want to put starter fertilizer on. You know, dry phosphate and dry sulfur is cheaper than liquid, about half the money. So I can place that in row, and I'll do that now. Like last year's wheat, I put half of my fertilizer down with the drill. The other half was stream jetted on the stubble. So all of the stuff that you're standing on actually has 40 pounds of stream jetted, 32 on. Hopefully I got it on early enough, we got enough rain, We did that on all last year's stuff. It lightens the load on how much fertilizer I need to put, and I'm hoping that I'm getting a little more positional nitrogen also. Like I said, a lot of flexibility because you can do either system. I started out with steel packers, drilled so heavy that I wanted to pack. I didn't want a split packer, because what happens a lot of times in this ground is if we open up the ground and we don't press over the seed, we can see it dry out. So I went back to the packers that came on this drill, which are a 5.5 semi-pneumatic, and that was kind of worked out almost accidentally, being a really good balance of being able to firm but not press too hard, because the steel packers I put on there were a little narrower and packed over the seed all right, and you'd have to chisel it out with a pocket knife. So the other good thing is you'll notice my openers have a pair grow piece in the back. When I'm seeding deep in the fall, that's where I'm putting my fertilizer. I'm putting it above the seed, off to the side, into the loose duff. If I get a late situation where I'm going to seed shallow, I flip my hoses, and now I'm putting a 5-inch pair grow wheat fertilizer deep. My packers, now all of a sudden I've got that 5-inch pair grow. I've essentially narrowed up the spacing on my drill by being able to do that. A lot of major modifications to the frame. There was a few braces that needed to be moved. There's a couple of these that had to be shortened up, but nothing that most people can't handle. And if I needed to convert the drill back to what it was before, I didn't chop the whole thing up and ruin the integrity of the drill. We are now seeding a little over 11,000 acres a year with 2 drills. We'll run one around the clock, and when you're seeding no-till, I'll seed this ground at 4.5 miles an hour, because you can keep the integrity of the furrow. You don't have all that loose soup covering, and I will have less cover on my no-till wheat than I will on my summer-fall wheat. And you'll find this year I have a few places where south-facing slopes or something that moisture wasn't very good, and I seeded Curiosity, and a lot of that wheat was only buried a couple inches, and after it rained, there's wheat there. It's small, but there's wheat. So, any questions on the drill?
I was just going to ask how many crops you have on this.
So, I've seeded, the first drill I put together about 7 years ago. My first no-till was on the second year I had the drill. My attitude was, I'm not going to be a no-tiller, so I'm going to prove to myself I can't make it work. Yeah.
How'd that work out for you?
It didn't work so good, because I picked probably the poorest piece of ground, a blowy piece of ground, Adams County ground, and it was a quarter section that I would lose the south and the west edge of that field no matter what I did. It just was blowy ground. No-tilled it, got it seeded early, and best crop that field ever raised. That is in crop this year, and every year I'm finding that, so now that's cycle number 3 seeded, it seeds so much better than first year no-till. First year no-till, a lot of this ground will break up big old clods, and it doesn't seal over the seed as well. It wants to dry out. When you get to that second and third time, that ground mellows out. And CRP takeout. I've done a bunch of CRP takeout where I've just mowed it, chem fallowed it, seeded into it, and it looks a little ugly because you will get some really big root balls rolling back into the row. It's not pretty, but wheat's pretty compensating. A lot of times it comes around it. If you can handle that second time around on that ground, that soil's black. If you can make the conversion coming out of CRP, you're halfway there to success on no-till. And it's amazing the things that I see in soil health going no-till on CRP. If I could put grass on everything else for, 5 or 6 years and then convert it back, that would be a really great jump start for this ground, because the ground that I've had CRP take out on no-till, I've never had any trouble seeding it. It's mellow. So
what's the hardest transition? When you made the transition, what was the hardest thing? When you were convincing yourself it wouldn't work, what was the most difficult thing in that transition to convince somebody to do it? What would be the most, you're going to say, hey, you're going to have this? What would you say?
the first crop's going to be difficult because, one, you're going to spend more money on chemical than you want to, and the timing, trying to get the timing down on the chemical. And guys have been doing this a long time. They just say spray every 30 days and just accept that. Well, the first couple of years I did this, I wasn't going to accept that. I was going to spray on my time. Well, my weed control wasn't that great, and that, it's still, weed control is an issue. We're now selecting for a different batch of weeds. Russian thistles are not the problem. Kochia's not the problem. It's now prickly lettuce, mare's tail. So, but for me, the initial investment was to replace some dryland drills. You can do this in a narrower setup with like an old Flexicoil 5000. You can get to the same place. The shanks are essentially set up, but it's a wing up style setup. You can make that happen. You can buy those in 30 footers all the way up to 60 footers, and those are a little cheaper. This drill, the smallest it comes in is 60 feet.
You bought it used. I mean, could you put an average number on it?
If I was to go out and find another used drill,
Because you put money into the point.
yeah. So this drill came out of Montana and actually only cost me $100,000 for the drill without any modifications. But I had another 20 plus in it by the time I did points, and I put the intelligent ag monitoring system on it. A lot of those guys in Montana, primary blockage only. I don't know how they do it. It truly is.
Absolutely.
It is the transition cost, because, again, for me, I had the luxury of being able to have enough acres that I could commit a portion of my farm to no-till the first few times. Because the first time that I decided I was really going to do a bunch, it was a couple thousand acres, and then it was 4,000 acres, then it was 5. Because all of a sudden you had a unit that was big enough to kind of take care of one piece of equipment. But if you want to dip your toes in the water and do a half section, you're not going to go spend $140,000. But the beauty of this design is it could be your conventional drill also. So it's not, you're not buying a no-till drill. Don't look at it that way. You're buying a drill with a lot of flexibility.
Bottom line, it's transition costs that we need help with.